Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us here for our February 3rd Tuesday at 3 webcast series event. Our topic this month is peak performance. I'm Alan Falcon, the CEO of Cumulus Global, and I want to thank you for taking time out of your busy day and week to join us here for the live session or to be viewing this presentation on demand. Before we get into the meat, as I like to remind everyone each month that the audio is muted to prevent any background noise or distractions. So if at any point in time during the session you've got a question, along the top or right-hand side of your screen, there's some icons. One of them opens a questions window. That's the best way to pose it. I get notified and I can track to make sure I've got all the questions answered before we leave the session this afternoon. This session is being recorded. We generally get it posted within about 24 hours once we process the video and get it up connected to our website. Feel free to share. We'll send you an email with a link to the on-demand recording as well. Note that I typically stop the recording before the Q&A session just so that those recorded versions don't run too long. So if you're watching this on demand and you have questions at any point in time, you have our contact information. Feel free to send it along. I'll share that again later in the hour as well. This webcast is one of many resources that we offer. We publish a blog on a fairly regular basis. We've got a pretty good library of ebooks and white papers for you. And in addition to this third Tuesday at 3 or 3 at 3 webcast series, we have a Coffee and Cloud series. Many of those are on demand. Those are shorter, very specific topics, often a little more technical in nature, very timely, so check those out. If you view one of those live or on demand, you can, if you want, you can pick a Dunkin' or a Starbucks card. We'll send you a gift card to cover the cost of the coffee that goes with those clouds. So with the housekeeping out of the way, sort of dive into the topic today. And really what was driving our desire to talk about peak performance and peak proficiency and productivity is that IT services is evolving. We see an emphasis on collaboration as we move from work that's about me doing the work to work in teams and with others, it's us. That might be a team within your company. It might be vendors or contractors. It could also be, clients as partners involved in projects as well. Communications oftentimes was synchronous. I send you something, you send me back. It's a lot more asynchronous now. It's the world we live in. Some people sort of look at the work generations and see the in-person meeting, the phone call, or the audio conference, the email, or the text, or chat. You can add social chat into that as well. So we have different ways of communicating, and no longer is it, a historically synchronous process. Productivity, we've often focused on speed, but people are realizing it's really about efficiency. And not necessarily doing things fast, but doing them effectively and well in a timely manner. And of course, with IT services evolving, the focus on cost and how do we lower our IT costs has really been shifting to value and how do we get the most value out of our investment. So today we're going to talk, when we talk about peak productivity, we're going to talk about a number of opportunities that we see. And these apply, and I'll give different examples from the Microsoft 365 world and the Google Workspace world. And we'll talk about some third-party tools as examples, but really covering a range of topics where we see people underutilizing the resources that are already available to them through their browser, on their laptops, on their mobile devices. And so we'll walk through these over the course of the rest of the session. And again, at any time, feel free to chime up in that questions window and ask any questions you have. So we'll start with the concept of single source collaborations. And what's interesting about this is, we've had, Office 365, now Microsoft 365 on the market. We've had, Google Workspace. We've been working with what's now Google Workspace and the ability to have single source collaboration since 2008, actually 2007. So it's not a new concept. And yet, when we talk and work with customers about getting the most value out of their productivity suite and getting the most productivity out of it, I'd say well over 60 to 65% of our customers, we see that the majority of their employees are not using the single source collaboration fields. They're still attaching documents, and people are still editing and managing individual copies of documents. And that's really not necessary anymore, particularly since both Google Workspace and Microsoft 365 are really designed to have single source collaboration. What do we mean by that? The document exists in one place. There's only one copy of it. Everybody collaborating on that document works in that document. And the system is there and set up so that you know who's made what changes, or in some cases, who has suggested specific changes. And you maintain the history of all of those changes as the document evolves. And why is it beneficial? Well, just think about it. If I have a Microsoft Word document and I email it as an attachment to and send it to you, there's the copy on my local drive, or maybe it's on a network drive on a file server someplace, or up in the cloud. There's a copy in my sent folder in Exchange. There's a copy in your inbox, and for you to edit it, you need to save it locally someplace to use. So you'll either save it on your desk, on your local machine, on a local server, or up in the cloud. Well, we now have 4 copies of that document, and 2 of them are being edited. The one I originally had and the one you have. So you make your edits, the change bars go in, excellent, you send it back to me, track changes is turned on. That's great. I now, that edited copy is now in your sent folder. It's in my inbox, and I have to save it again. Okay, and if we're sharing file space in the cloud or on a file server, preferably in the cloud, where am I going to save that document? I have to worry about naming conventions. So I know it's the version of the document with your comments. And then I have to manage that document and say, okay, do I just edit your changes and make that the working document? That's great when you only have 2 collaborators. But now let's say I have a document and I've got a team of 4, everyone who's providing input. That means I'm going to send that document to 3 people and get 3 separate documents back. And I have to mix and match and pull in all of the different comments. And the change bar system doesn't really work, because if I accept the changes from your document and do a compare, I won't necessarily know if the second and third person I'm comparing with wanted the same change as you or something different. And what happens if you get 2 opposing changes? So single source collaboration is based on the concept you only need 1 copy of the document. You just have to give everyone the right access to either provide their comments or edits. And my screenshots here are from the Google Workspace side. It's just as easy on the Microsoft 365 side, right? So, one of the things you can do is simply in an email message say, hey, I want to attach a document from Drive or from OneDrive or SharePoint on the Microsoft side. And instead of sending it as an attachment, you send it as a link. Okay? Similarly, you can be in the document and decide to share it, and the system will send an automated message. And in the middle image on the screen is a screenshot of what comes to the recipient, the person I'm sharing with. Additionally, if you're scheduling a meeting to talk about a document, you can actually attach and provide a link to the document as part of the meeting invite. And all these capabilities give you the mechanism to say, here's a document, it's the 1 copy. Now, on the 365 side of things, those documents could be in OneDrive, they can be in SharePoint or SharePoint file services, they can be part of Teams or group. Wherever they are, the underlying file system's the same, and that single source collaboration will work. And so by switching to single source collaboration, you save time in the mechanics of distributing documents and receiving feedback. It's also easier to maintain a historical record. So if there's a discussion about how a decision was made or when changes were made, you have that in a single viewpoint as well. And certainly Google Workspace and Google brought this to the forefront a little earlier than in the Microsoft environment, but you have that ability to do collaboration in real time. And so here you can see a document, and I'm in it, and looking in the upper right hand, looking in the upper bar, you see another image. There's my alter ego who's also in it. You can see that person just added the word specialist in the first sentence under purpose to this job description. Okay, and so collaboration with real time, you actually see the edits happening in real time. If you've got multiple people editing, you can click on the person's identity and jump to that location. Now, you still have the ability to track changes. So one of the settings you have, and this is both in the Microsoft and in the Google environment, is to say I'm not giving someone the ability to edit. I'm going to give them the ability to suggest. And you can also restrict them to view only. But suggesting, when you talk about collaboration, means that when they type something in, you'll notice here on the right-hand side of the screen that the word specialist has been added, and it's been added as a suggestion by my alter ego, and I have the ability now, there's a comment box on the right-hand side. I can reply and ask questions about the suggested edit. I can tag someone using the ampersand, the @ sign, so they get a notification that I'm waiting for a response. I can check it and accept the change, or I can click at X and reject the change. And so you have the ability now to have multiple people suggesting changes in a single document, and the owner of the document, the primary author, has the ability to accept, reject the changes, make further edits, etc. And that gives you the ability to have, management of the review process, not in real time, everyone working in the document at the same time, in a more traditional way, but again, single source collaboration saves you time, effort, and money, improves that productivity for team. The other aspect with this collaboration is it becomes asymmetrical, right? You don't need to send it through a workflow if you don't want to. Everyone can be making edits at the same time, and you still have that full history and version control. So here's a look at that document that you'd seen some other proposed changes to. I went and pulled back a prior version, after I had taken a copy of a previous job description, started editing it. So from 11/17 back in December, on the 28th, you can actually see all of the changes that were highlighted with X outs and highlighted as additions and see the changes. So you get color-coded red lines, if you will, for each person who's made opposite. You have the ability to name versions. So if I had a formal version 1, version 2, version 3, I can name those and have them as major milestones and versions, and I can limit my display to that. And I can click on any one of these sets of changes and say, restore this version and bring it back to that point in time, and still not lose the history. So if I took the version I'm looking at and said, you know what, I want to revert to the way this document looked at 11:17 a.m., I can click, say, restore version, and in the history, you'd now see a new version of the document. The February 22nd, 8:54 a.m. version would still be there as part of the history. I can revert to that or revert forward to that if I wanted to as well. And so it gives you a lot of flexibility. Again, similar capabilities on the Microsoft 365 side of the world. The key is by not worrying about and not creating confusion and having multiple copies of documents, you save the searching, you save the headaches with naming convention, you avoid duplicate work, and you avoid mistakes. And so that is a huge boost to productivity. The next major topic I want to address is social communications. Right, and here we see a number of companies who are running Google Workspace or talking to us with they have Microsoft 365 and they call us up and say, hey, we're thinking of getting Slack or we're thinking of using this other tool. My question is why? Both Google Workspace and Microsoft 365 have social communications built in. And why is this important? It's a generational thing. Some people say it's the Facebookification of work. Who knows? Who cares? Not important to me. What is important is that you have people who are going to want to communicate via chat. And chat gives you an opportunity to do things in a more productive way, right? So for us within an organization, chat started out with the "Are you free?" I could chat someone to see if they were free before I picked up the phone and called them, or before I launched an audio conference or a video conference. At the spur of the moment, I have a question for them. Okay, certainly with COVID-19 and offices being closed and remote work, instant messaging, the chat features became more important as a way of having that informal communications, the kind of things you get when you're walking around the office and you bump into someone and have a question, or you step out of your office over to theirs or to their cubicle or their desk and stand next to them and ask them a quick question, go back to work, or maybe you're stopping on your way to and from lunch or snack or whatever. All that informal communication is facilitated by social communications. And helping your employees and your team members understand how to use it and coming up with somewhat of a consensus on how you're going to use it can become effective, right? And the productivity boost comes because the action and the response can happen more quickly and more reliably. And because chats are searchable in both Microsoft and Google environments, you can look to see on a project, for example, if someone asked a question that was already answered. It's easy to do. and it's easier than searching your emails, right? Or searching a project status document potentially. So there's a lot of capabilities here. The other thing that helps is with the interpersonal relationships, and that you do have things like emoticons and kudos and flags, and the fact that both Microsoft Teams and Google Chat have the ability to have those private conversations as well as group conversations gives you that flexibility. The fact that both of them let you launch video conferencing immediately, one click, easily, means that you can get the face-to-face interaction, you can get the visual cues of seeing someone's face and reaction as you're communicating with them. It makes that person-to-person, even though you're not physically near each other, communications much more effective and much more doable. And you can avoid the loss of understanding, the loss of tone and intent that is often an issue when people use more traditional email communications. And so the productivity here is in a number of different ways. It's interpersonal relationship development. It's more nuanced communications. It's immediate, communicate and response in a very informal way, where information and ideas can be exchanged and moved back and forth, very easily and very quickly, and with a visibility to the project team. That's the other advantage that Google Chat with the Spaces features has and Microsoft Teams has, is if I'm asking another member of my team a question, everyone on that team can see the question, they can see the answer, the knowledge is shared. And that improves team dynamics and group productivity as well. So meetings. This is a usability, the one-click video. I added this in at the last minute because this really is a usability function. And one of the things we see is we see people investing in Microsoft 365. We see companies moving into Google Workspace. Microsoft 365 comes with Teams meeting. Some of the additions, that includes telephony integration for those meetings. Others, there's an add-on you have. When you have Google Meet on the Google side, people can connect by computer and be full audio video. They can, or they can dial in from a traditional phone and be involved audio only. In both of these environments, it doesn't matter if you're on a PC, a Mac, a laptop, a tablet, or a smartphone. You can participate in a meeting audio and video if you want, in very high quality as well. Even that said, we still have people paying for Zoom subscriptions or from GoToMeeting subscriptions, both of those can get very expensive depending on the number of users and the level of service that you think your business needs. And part of the reason we hear is, well, so many people use Zoom, it's easy. So I like to point out that when you're in both Microsoft and in Google, when you're scheduling a meeting, in Google, when we deploy for customers, by default, if there's more than one person in a meeting, we automatically include the Meet link. So we don't even have to do any additional setup to say, yes, we want an audio or video conference capability with this meeting, and the link and the login information is automatically added to the invite. It's in the appointment. When someone clicks on their calendar to say, oh, what's my 10:30 meeting on Friday? It'll, they look in the description. In the description is the link to join and the phone number to dial in if they want to join in that way. With Microsoft 365 and Outlook, we schedule a calendar appointment, Teams meeting, we click it, boom, turn it on, yes. That link's going to go out. It's going to be a participant in it. It saves time and money. We're literally potentially saving 3 to 5 minutes every time you go to schedule a meeting by taking advantage of the one-click video. It also makes it easier on the people you're meeting with because all of the information is included in the actual meeting invite and in the meeting as it appears on their calendars as well. Beyond meetings, there's the issue of scheduling. And there's two aspects to scheduling. One is, how do I just schedule normal meetings with me? And then the other type of scheduling is, how do I make appointments or bookings for my service? In the Microsoft 365 environment, you've got the Microsoft Bookings app. This lets you set up a set of rules of different types of meetings you want to accept and who can handle those meetings, and puts it forward in a way so you see, the big image with the initial consult there is sort of the setup, and you can see, well, what type of, I'm having trouble with my mouse today, sorry about that, sorry about the jump. You can see here the initial consult. You set it up, the service details, how long is the meeting, what's the description, which staff members can be scheduled, and then you share with your customers the link, you embed it in your website. Hey, you want to time with me? You can put a link in your email footer. Click here, they can go, they can pick what type of meeting they want. They can still see your availability. They click on a day, they get the times, they fill in their information, and they book it, and it's there. There's no, hey, are you, I'm going to send you an invite. I can't meet that time. When can you meet? Send me a list of dates and times. These work for me. There's a joke in the industry that the number of emails required to schedule a meeting in the traditional way is the number of participants in the meeting squared. If it's you and one other person, it's going to take 4 emails. If there's 3 of you, it's going to take 8. If there's 4 of you, it's going to take 16 emails to get all 4 people into a meeting. Google has a similar, slightly less robust feature called appointment slots, where you can pre-allocate times on your calendar for different types of appointments. You can see on the example screenshot here, I take vendor calls on Thursday mornings, and I do one-to-one networking meetings on Friday afternoons. You set up those blocks of time, like it's shown in the pop-up windows. It's easy, and you share the link, and people can see when you're available with appointment slots. Now, these features, both of them in some respect, are outwardly facing. Particularly Microsoft Bookings was initially designed for small businesses that run on appointments. So you can manage, dog groomers, hair salons, small medical practices, anyone who wanted to give their clients or their customers an online scheduling tool where they either pick a specific provider who works for your company or they round robin to who's available. And you can have different types of meetings for that. We get into scheduling too. Some people want to say, well, how do I just make it schedule for me? How to make it easier for me to schedule a meeting with someone I want to meet to? And there are third-party tools, right? And both of them, and the two I've highlighted here, I'm using one tool here. We use HubSpot, so that's what I've used. But there's Calendly, there's other tools as well that all serve these functions. And so if you look at the screenshots that I've taken on the left-hand side, when I'm creating a message, there's a meetings link. I can put in, I can say what type of meeting. I pick the type of meeting it is. I've clicked on 60, 30, or 15-minute meeting, and that puts a link in the email. When the recipient clicks that link, they get a pop-up window in their browser or a browser window with a tab open. They see my calendar, they pick a day, how long of a meeting do they need, and they can pick a time that I'm available. Boom, the meeting is booked. The other option, the way these tools work, again, Calendly, HubSpot, several others, lets you actually pick times that you want. You don't want to, maybe you don't want someone to see your full availability. You've got 4 times that you want to meet with this individual. Excellent. I'm sending Chris a note to discuss a job description. I've picked 4 specific times using the tool, and it embeds it in. All Chris has to do is click on one of those 4 times, and the meeting gets booked. It ends up on his calendar. It ends up on mine. Okay, and again, providing that one-click meeting saves the back and forth and communications, the miscommunications, the missed messages. It improves productivity simply by speeding the process of getting that scheduling done. Okay, time management. One of the big challenges we have in productivity, and this isn't really an operational issue, this is more of a best practice and time management issue, is what tools are there to manage your time? And again, both Microsoft in blue and Google in green give you options to do it, where you can go into your calendar and you can actually, in Microsoft, schedule an appointment and say, show it as busy, even if you're not inviting anyone, right? And have that focus time where you're going to block off a couple hours to do specific tasks, work on a specific project. You're effectively saying, I'm not available now. Okay. Now on the Google side, they have the ability to do that for out of office, and with that and focus time, you have the ability to automatically decline meetings. You can say if there's something already on my calendar, don't cancel it, or cancel that, or just only cancel new meeting invitations that come in. And there's a response message to anyone who tries to schedule a meeting at that time. on why you're declining it. And so in this example, I've got some focus time. I'm letting people know I'm declining any meeting requests. I'm focused on work for a client during that time slot. It lets me lets me block off times. And so when we look at it and we look at, salespeople who are doing their prep work for the day, we see it with service people blocking off time midday or end of day to make sure they've got time to finish and make sure all of their documentation on the service calls are correct. Your financial people may want to block out days when it's, month-end closing periods where people just don't accidentally block those times, and you can make these recurring and do it. And so the tools are there to help individuals manage their own time and prevent people from blocking time or blocking or requesting meetings at times when you don't want or can't be available. Managing email. Many tools here, and there are different philosophies on how you might want to manage your email to boost productivity. Some of the basics that are available within Outlook and within Google Workspace are the ability to organize your inbox, the use of folders, how the inbox itself is presented, and whether or not you have a preview pane. And so a couple of highlights here, if you look at the green in the Google environment, they've got 3 density layouts on how many messages will look, how dense the inbox will be. Do you want more white space? Do you want it as compact as possible? I like it compact. I like to see as many emails on the list as possible. What type of inbox do you want? Do you want unread followed by all the read messages? Do you want to create priorities for certain types of messages? The cool thing in both Microsoft and Google is there's AI involved. And so when you set up an inbox type and say, for example, I want priority inbox in the Google world, over time, Gmail learns which emails are priority for you. And you can do that by flagging certain senders or emails as high importance, and they'll end up in the priority. But if not, if there's certain things you always answer within a certain period of time right away, high reply rates, etc., they'll end up in your priority inbox as opposed to other inboxes. You can also manage multiple inboxes. You can split screens, you can have preview panes, etc. There's a number of things you can do. Both Google and Microsoft now offer the ability to snooze. And this really gets into the philosophy of zero inbox, where your inbox is your active to-do list. So if you're not going to answer an email now, it's something you need to read and respond to, but you're going to do it at the end of the day, or you're not going to address it until tomorrow, or hey, you read all your newsletters on Saturday morning, that's great. Both Google and Microsoft, and here's a screenshot of Outlook, let you snooze, and there's some preset options there. You can pick a specific date and time. It actually takes it out of the inbox, so it's not cluttering your inbox anymore. And when the snooze comes off, it goes back to your inbox. Okay. And as I mentioned, both Microsoft and Google have now embedded artificial intelligence that learns your preferences and helps you manage. Now, there's some third-party tools like SaneBox and others that let you filter inbound emails into different categories, in different labels or different folders, things you want to read now, things you want to read later. It provides, the snooze function in both Google and Microsoft provides some of that. SaneBox, other tools like that are just a little more sophisticated, and they're out there. Again, keeping your inbox uncluttered, managing as a to-do list, putting off things that can be put off, managing your time and your priority and work can all help boost your productivity. Now, I talked about embedded artificial intelligence in email management. Microsoft and Google are putting AI in other areas of the application as well. Google's gotten pretty good at type ahead, Microsoft as well. So you start to type a sentence, it's a common sentence you use. You'll see the rest of the sentence pop up with an indicator, hit the tab key, it fills it in for you. You do 1 keystroke instead of 30 to finish the sentence. Cool stuff. There are other areas where the embedded AI has been leveraged as well, and one of them is how you handle sensitive information. And in this example, I'm just going to focus on Microsoft 365 because it's where I was able to get easy screenshots and demonstrate it. And it starts out administratively, where you say, I deal with financial information. So I'm going to set up a policy for how I protect financial information. And it's U.S. financial data, which is going to be credit card number, U.S. bank account numbers, or ABA routing numbers. So clearly, I don't want those to leak. I want those to remain confidential. I can then, in the Microsoft 365 world, turn on protections and say, where do I want to apply that policy? Which means, where do I want to prevent this information from being shared inadvertently? Where if it was shared externally, it would be a link, right? And so here I can include accounts or distribution groups. I can make it universal, and I can exclude specific groups if they're allowed to see the information. I can control it. And what happens? I send an email. It looks like it might have, it has, someone's social security number in it, or it looks like it's a credit card number or a bank account information. And that email is going to get flagged. It's not going to be sent. I'm going to get notified that I might be linking information. I have that information in a Word document or in a spreadsheet up in OneDrive. I copy it into a folder that people outside my organization or outside my department have access to. Violation gets flagged. The permissions get pulled off. I get notified. I have an opportunity to fix it. Additionally, you can set up rules. For example, when you're sending email, and here's the message options that comes off. So when you're sending a message, you click on the little three dots in the menu bar. One of them is message options, and you can pick sensitivity. And you can actually administratively go in and say, well, what does it mean when something's confidential? Well, I can say, something's personal. I don't want people to be able to forward it. Something's private. I don't want them to be able to forward it. Or share it with other people. Something's very confidential. I don't want them to be able to print it either. And you can put those types of restrictions specifically on outbound emails. And with certain Microsoft 365 licenses, you've got digital rights management and AI built in that you can set general rules that say, hey, for confidential documents or emails, here's the policy on how I want to restrict what happens when it's shared and how it's shared. And the AI will start to understand what you consider to be confidential. You can have specific policies, but it'll also learn from you what's confidential, and it might flag a document and say, hey, is this confidential? Or, hey, I flagged this as confidential based on the content, and you can agree or disagree and have it go on. And so again, over time, it takes burden off of individual users to properly manage and process information. It saves you time, it saves you embarrassment, it saves you risk, it improves productivity. Okay. Now, the one area that we talk about, getting peak productivity goes back to time management and how you use your time. And this is specifically relevant to small business owners and entrepreneurs. Particularly if you don't have dedicated IT resources within your organization. And even then, what's the level of service they're providing for you? So in preparing for this webcast over the last couple of weeks, I've spoken to a number of customers and prospective customers on some of the frustrations they've had with IT, and then we went back with them and sort of walked them through those issues and what was the time impact, right? So my first conversation was actually with a gentleman who deleted a file off of his laptop. He had backup software. It was backed up into the cloud, which is a good thing. But it took him an hour and a half to log into the backup system and figure out where the file was in the backup and how to restore it. That's a lot of time. Another gentleman I spoke to signed on a new client. They have rules and asked that certain information be sent in an encrypted way. He knew that, he knew that Microsoft 365, his licensing included email encryption. He had never used it before. It took him 2.5 hours to figure out how to use it, that he had to go into the admin section, turn on a setting, go back, do some refresh, send the email a certain way. A lot of time. A woman we work with was trying to share a file with, certain people at one of her clients and was having difficulties. She was searching the web, she was searching online help to try and understand how to fix the permissions on those files. Another woman we work with, hard drive on her laptop, failed. Now, granted, she was lucky; she had offsite cloud-based backup, so data wasn't lost. But she decided the best option for her was to get a new laptop. She spent 7.5 hours over multiple web sessions looking up specs, comparing vendors, looking at availability at different stores. Do I pick it up? Do I get it delivered? When it arrived, the Windows install was self-install. It's pretty, takes about an hour, pretty well automated, very little interaction. But then she had to reinstall her applications and reload all of her data. It took her about 9.5 hours to get everything done and back up and running. Another client, her hard drive failed and her machine wasn't that old. She decided to restore the laptop. By the time she got in warranty a new drive and sent to her and installed to restore her files and applications, that whole process took 4 days. And without an alternative, she was struggling to conduct her business using her phone and a computer she borrowed that wasn't set up with her applications and her access. And so it had a significant impact on her business. So how do we deal with these types of challenges? Because you think about, how many of us would be okay with not being able to effectively do our jobs for 4 days out of a week, or to say, hey, great, I got, my new laptop came in, was delivered on Wednesday, and really spend all of Thursday or most of Thursday and part of Friday getting it up and running. Just as bad saying, I'll do it this weekend at home, where you're worried about getting that laptop installed and up and running instead of using your downtime to refresh and doing things you enjoy or spending with friends and family. And so it has a major impact. So the solution there is really where we start heading into what kind of services do you want to support your productivity. And granted, it's always great to have a support resource at the ready. You can send an email, fill out a form, make a phone call, and get the help you need. But a lot of problems can be mitigated, and a lot of activities can be taken off your plate if you have experts available to you who can manage and administer your IT services, and keep it running for you, and deal with the problems or the user questions when it comes up to play. When those come into play and those problems arise. So in these examples, right, having experts managing and administering your IT services would have meant that, this customer of ours wouldn't have spent 2.5 hours figuring out how to encrypt the confidential email. It would have been a call saying, hey, I've got a customer, I need to encrypt my emails. I believe I can do it. And the response would be, okay, yep, we'll make sure the feature's turned on. We'll call you back and we'll walk you through sending the email so you understand, right? So instead of 2.5 hours of frustration, it's a 5-minute conversation followed up by a 5-minute call and demo or a walkthrough. And in 10 minutes, that person hasn't just accomplished the task, but they've learned how to do it again for the future. And let's face it, you as a business owner don't need to know how to turn on and off encryption services in Microsoft 365. You just want to know that when you need to send an encrypted email, that you can do it and it's going to happen, it's going to be reliable, right? So that's where the expert management administration comes in, okay? It also means that we're monitoring your laptop so we see problems that might be coming down the road, and we can preemptively take action before there's a critical failure. Now, we like to embed smart education into your week. In part, as we've talked about here, a lot of the things I've talked about are embedded in the Microsoft 365 and the Google Workspace environment, and people either aren't aware that they're there or they think they understand they're there, but they don't really understand how to use it, okay? And so by providing education, not in the, hey, let's sit you on a Zoom, let's sit you in a Teams meeting or Google Meet for 4 hours and demo stuff to you, that's not a good way to learn. Most people learn effectively in small doses where they can immediately apply it. So for example, in the Microsoft 365 world, we've got a service where once or twice a week, you're going to get an email saying, hey, here's you use Word a lot, you do this type of thing in Word, here's a way to automate that or make it easier. Click and watch the 90-second to 3-minute video and you understand. Or, hey, you make a lot of phone calls, here's a link, did you know you can do this type of video meeting that you may not have known before? Or here's a different way to do presentations. And so the smart education isn't just, reinforcing how you use the tools you're comfortable with and you have been using, but pointing out new tools in your environment, new features, new capabilities that you may not have used before that could really help your job function. And in larger organizations, we can actually tune that curricula to the job role, knowing that the types of things a salesperson needs to know within the Microsoft environment and suite of tools is going to be different than the finance person. Okay, so that's part of what we talk about as an overall solution. And the last piece is having simple continuity plans and tools in place. So for example, our client who was pretty much out of business effectively for 4 days, for not a lot of money, as little as $20 a month, we can provide not just a backup of that laptop, but an image of that laptop that can be loaded in a cloud environment and accessed from any browser. So yep, in 30 minutes, we could have had her up and running and managing her business. Granted, running an image through a browser is a little slower than running natively on your hardware, without a doubt, but you're up, you're running, you're effective, you can get your job done and keep working for those 4 days while the new laptop drive or the new laptop arrives and gets set up, etc., and avoid that. So having that overall solution is really, we come in and we talk about managed cloud services, where we're going to offload the administration and management of your IT infrastructure, applications, and services from you. You work your business. We make sure IT is working for you and supporting your business. We integrate not just the support, but the training and the education. It's a strategic resource for you. And if you're not a solopreneur, your entire team. We monitor and assess how you're using the tools you have to drive better adoption and change management, help you continually look at ways to best use the tools to do your job, and to identify areas where maybe a new tool or new application would be appropriate, or you've got duplicate applications or services that are duplicating one another, and we can consolidate and simplify it effective, to create cost savings. And the nice part about our managed cloud services is we scale them at 4 tiers: Essential, Basic, Business, and Premier, so we can match the suite of services that you need to your specific business requirements. We know, for example, that many small businesses don't need certain types of encryption. It's not required from a regulatory or an industry standards and practices. We've got options that don't include that as a service, is one example. Okay, so we can mix and match, we have these tiers, and we can meet the needs of your business in a way that matches the scope of service to your business needs and your budget. Okay, so, so what's the action plan? First step, assess. Let's have that conversation about your business objectives and your challenges. Let's prioritize what needs to change, if anything, and how we can facilitate that. For us, it's how, around peak productivity, it's how we're using your tools, what components are you using, what components are you not using, what do you think is missing, what do you think would help you. From then, we can look and say, hey, it might just mean training, activation of a service you already have, and training your team on use of that service, or setting up rules of engagement for how you're going to use a particular feature or function that's available within your environment. Maybe it means finding another application or tool, probably, maybe not, but that's a possibility as well. And once you sort of have that, say, hey, here's how we're going to move forward, and here's some things, tangible things we can do. Some will have costs, others won't. So let's look at the value proposition, the benefits of moving forward versus the impact of inaction. We can then plan it out, manage the change, provide the education, the support, execute that change, and make an impact on your business. So at this point in time, I'm going to remind you that you can ask us questions, info@cumulusglobal.com. We'll get routed to myself or one of our cloud advisors. We'll get back to you usually within half a business day. If you want to contact me, my email address, afalcon@cumulusglobal.com, that goes right to me. I don't have an administrative assistant. I'm the only person who filters my own email. I will tell you my phone number's there. That's direct to my desk, but I'm not good at answering the phone if I'm busy. And I'm certainly horrible about answering voicemails. So email is the best way to contact me. You can also use the contact form on our website if at any point you have any questions. If you have any questions from today's sessions and you're here live, open up that questions window. Now's the time to ask. For those of you who are watching on demand, I'm going to break the recording now, so I take a moment to thank you for taking time out of your day to watch this webcast on demand. I hope it was helpful. Again, if you have any follow-up questions, let us know. We're happy to get on the phone as a courtesy, talk you through, hear what your needs are, and help get you moving in the right direction. That's what we're here for. So thanks for joining us. Have a great week, and we hope we'll see you again next month.